All right. So for this episode's quick tip, put it in reverse. I want to kind of discuss with you a little bit the benefits of backwards walking, but not only just backwards walking or walking in reverse, backwards jogging, backwards sprinting, backwards bike riding, backwards sled drags. They are super beneficial to your body, to you, and it contributes greatly to your overall health. Now, what are those key benefits? The key benefits really come down to, well, it improves balance and coordination, and it actually has some cognitive benefits as well. Let me set that aside real quick. It improves your balance because, and let's look at it this way. If you're at a desk and you're at an office all day, every day, and you're sitting on certain muscles, and you're basically telling your body, I don't need these muscles, right? And if you're sitting more than 8 hours a day, you got a problem, right? Because now your body is literally going to adapt to that. As your body adapts to that, you're basically just turning off certain muscles. And it's like, well, we don't need to send a muscle building stimulus. We don't really need to send any signals to use these muscles. Why? Because you're sitting on them, right? Backwards walking can actually reverse some of the harmful effects that come from sitting down all day, right? So that's a huge benefit right there up front, right? But like more specifically, what does it do, right? So let's just start with backwards walking, right? It does improve balance and it improves cognition, improves coordination. And it does that by way of really strengthening the muscles that you typically would not use. So if you're walking forward all the time, you're using a certain set of muscles, primarily your quads, and you use your tibialis a lot. So basically all the front muscles, right? So hip flexors, bringing your leg up to actually take that step and all that fun stuff. So if you did it in reverse, you will be working all of the back muscles, glutes, hams, calves, right? Those are just as important, especially if you've had any knee issues at all. One of the main points of rehab for anybody who has had a serious knee injury, they start to ease into walking backwards and doing things going backwards because you want to strengthen up all of the muscles that connect into the knee, both front and back, right? So backwards walking has great benefits in terms of strengthening those muscles that you typically would not strengthen just with regular forward basic walking, right? Another pretty decent benefit to walking backwards in general is, or doing any of these exercises in reverse, is it improves your proprioception, which is kind of a fancy way of saying this is improving your body awareness as far as where your body is placed and how it's positioned spatially, right? So it's like a prime example of this would be somebody who cannot feel that their back is rounded on a deadlift. Now, I'm not getting into the argument or the debate about whether your back can round or what's permissible, what's not. I'm just saying in general, their back is rounded and they can't feel that their back is rounded and they think it's straight. That's a person who typically has they're lower on that scale. So, but walking backwards actually gives you that sense for where your body is, where your limbs are, and how they're moving and how they're positioned, right? Which is a great skill to have, especially if you are doing any form of resistance training, right? You need to know where your body is positioned, how it's positioned in order to pull off proper form. It's very good for our aging population, right? Because one of the number one things that causes trouble, I'll say, is the lack of balance. And then that leads to falls, and that leads to more complications and more issues than you would believe, right? It leads to a lot of issues. A fall for an elderly person is, straight up is one of the leading causes of death, which is not great at all, right? So the more you can maintain your balance and still maintain your coordination and all that fun stuff later on in life, the better off you'll be, and the better quality of life you'll have. So walking backwards is actually a really good exercise for that population. It's also really good for athletes. I mean, if you think about it, football players do it all the time, especially, well, cornerbacks, right? What's the number one thing they have to do? Backpedal, backpedal, backpedal. That's all. That's basically just sprinting backwards, right? But it's good for your knees. It's good for your glutes. It's good for your hams. Good for your calves. Good for your coordination. And especially if you're an athlete in general and you can backpedal and then explode out of the backpedal, yeah, so I'm starting to geek out a little bit, but that's good for you, right? So how do these exercises break down really, right? And you got to think of it this way: if you're walking, just walk backwards. Like if you're on a treadmill and you have the guards, start off walking on the treadmill backwards, holding onto the guards, but then work your way. And I wouldn't work your way up according to like by speed, but just work your way up according to balance. So you can better balance yourself as you're walking. You won't need to hold on to the guards anymore. That's your first point of, I guess, first goal to set out in front of you when you're walking backwards, if you're using a treadmill, right? Or you could just go outside and walk backwards, but just, watch out for curbs and tree limbs, rocks, people. Right? So just look out for that stuff. So again, either way, make sure that you have the guards around you to be able to do it safely, and then kind of build your way up. That's why starting on a treadmill is pretty decent in this case. In order to do so another suggestion, another exercise suggestion that I have here is to do your sled pushes or your sled drags and do them in reverse. So if you were doing this like a heavy sled drag, you have like the sled or whatever, or the tank, whatever you want to use at that point in time, hook it up and grab some handles and back step your way, locking up your upper body, of course, and then just back step, going back little by little your way across, as opposed to maybe like having a harness on and you're kind of just turned around and you're moving forward, digging into the ground, trying to pull this tank that way. You can put that in reverse. You could do that also with in terms of sprints. And I go back to like the jogging. Like you could do a backwards jog. You could do a backwards sprint as well, right? So a backwards jog, you're a little bit more upright, and it actually kind of looks like you're galloping. And I do see the backwards jog pretty often. A lot of soccer players do it, right? So I see soccer players, they'll kind of jog forward and then just keep that same position, and they'll jog backwards up and down a soccer field, which doesn't sound like fun. I probably would have fun doing that. Anyway, you could do a backward sprint, and as like I said before, that's what cornerbacks do basically, where they lower their hips and they're down in like an action stance, and they're just back, and they're stepping back, right? But they're really pushing their toes into the ground to propel backwards, right? That's a really good way to develop. First of all, it develops explosive power, but it also really develops, again, the glutes and the hamstrings, and it gets them working in unison to get you to move your body and still maintain your balance, right? So those are probably the best ways that I can think of, like ways to implement it. Start off with the walking one. That's the easiest one. Pop on a treadmill, turn around, and step it backwards. We're not worried about speed. We're worried about balance at first. And then once you maintain your balance, then you kick up the speed a little bit. You can even do some of those, hips low, backpedaling, backwards sprinting. I don't know how well that will work out on some treadmills, but I know some of the self-propelled ones, it works out pretty well. And you just, hop, skip off, right? But I wouldn't suggest that if you're like, have knee issues or anything like that. But so that's what I would suggest doing, right? Next time, even for like a warm-up, test it out for a warm-up. You're going to warm up on a treadmill for a little bit. 2 minutes, 30 seconds forward, 2 minutes, 30 seconds backwards. And you'll be good. You'll be good. I actually typically do that for leg day warm-up. In fact, I actually have an air bike here, and That's another good apparatus to use where you can do forward and backward. Now, it doesn't have the exact same effect as maybe backwards walking, but what I found was when I'm going backwards on the air bike, it actually gives me a decent stretch in my knee or in my knees. I got it in both of my knees, not just one, right? And it just seems I warm up a lot better. So it makes a lot of these squats and even like leg extensions or whatever, but leg press and things like that much, much easier in terms of, how it feels on my joints, right? So there you have it. That's the way I would go about it. Put it in reverse. Go for it. Let me know how it goes. So if you like this segment, here's another one for you. Click over here. And if you want the entire podcast, go this way. Click on that one right there. And once again, I appreciate you. All right, you take it easy.